Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining this session where we're going to be discussing the silence of baby loss in Black communities. My name is Patrice, and I'm a bereavement support services officer for SANS with a focus of reaching out to and supporting Black communities. SANS charity has been supporting bereaved families for 40 years. Their vision is to have a world where fewer babies die, and when a baby does die, that anyone affected receives the best possible care and support for as long as they need it. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the team at SANS for helping to organise this event, and I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to our panel members for taking their time to join us this evening. Most of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining. I'm so happy that so many of you could join this evening. You may be a parent who has experienced a loss, and this could have been recently or some time ago. You may have been touched with baby loss for another reason, but whatever your reason for joining, we hope that this session is what you hope it to be, and that we can really start to talk about this important subject that's often not spoken about. So just to explain how the next 2 hours are going to run, we're going to have a panel discussion, which will last for around 45 minutes. And then in the second hour, you are free to ask any questions that you may have or share your own experience if that's something that you would like to do. We want to ensure that this event is as inclusive as possible, and we want to allow everyone to share how they are feeling. And so we ask that if you do have any questions whilst the panel members are talking, that you put them in the chat box, and that will allow us to collectively discuss these questions after the panel discussion ends. Now, we know that this session could be triggering, and so we really just want to remind you to take the time and step away if you need to, whether that's to stop talking, to come off Zoom, to step away. It's really important that you do look after yourselves. We also want to let you know that our helpline is open this evening and closes at 9 o'clock, and will be open again tomorrow morning. So if you do, after you've listened today, if you want to talk about the experience of being in this Zoom meeting, or just if you want to talk about how you're feeling about your loss, then please do call the helpline. And throughout this session, we'll be posting details of the helpline in the chat. So before we start our panel discussion, I would like to invite the panel members to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Tara.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Tara Alexis. I'm an actress and a writer, and I'm also the founder of non-profit organisation Mothers of Angels. Our mission is to create space to acknowledge and to honour all women who have experienced pregnancy and baby loss.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. If we could move over to Carol now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carol Joseph, and I'm a mother with no living children. My children died. I have two children who have died, stillborn, and I've been on this journey coming up to 15 years.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you for being here. Ryan?
Hello, everyone. My name's Ryan Parkinson. I was honoured to be asked to join the panel for this important event. Breaking the silence of baby loss in the Black community is something that needs more attention. A little bit of information about me. Excuse me. I am a counsellor. My two main specialisms are bereavement and children and young people. I am passionate about increasing participation for ethnic minorities in counselling and mental health services.
Thank you, Ryan. And Tunji.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be asked to be part of the panel. I'm Tunji Falana, and I am an actor and a producer. And I guess that's me. It's a pleasure to be there, and hope everyone has a good time learning and gaining information. And
Thank you, Tunji, and thank you to all of the panel members once again. So we know that grief is not selective. Bereaved parents come from diverse cultures, backgrounds, and circumstances. There are common threads, but every experience is unique. Without question, the one shared pact should be that parents who have lost a baby are supported by those around them, whether it be their family, their friends, healthcare workers, community, or their employers. But we know that baby loss often isn't spoken about within all communities, including Black communities, which can lead to a lack of the vital support that they need. Since starting working at SANS, I'm often asked why baby loss within Black communities isn't spoken about. And I'd like to open the panel discussion with this question. So if I go over to Tara, what do you think are some of the things that hinder people from reaching out for support?
I think there are quite a few reasons why people might not reach out for support. I think there are internal reasons to the Black community not reaching out, and also external reasons why members of the Black community might not reach out during their baby loss experience, or even just talk about the subject in general. I think one of the external reasons, as I was thinking, one of the main ones which especially resonates with me, I had my loss 12 years ago. I had a late miscarriage after carrying my son for 5 months. I turned up at the hospital and was told there was no heartbeat. And at the time of my loss, so 12 years ago from now, in terms of organizations that talk about baby loss or that help and offer support, I think I was told of maybe one or two, and I did not see any Black people, like online, social media, anything at the time. The representation, I think, is a real big thing. And I think it's as simple as if you see someone who looks like you, who has had a similar experience as you, then you're more likely to feel at ease at talking about your own experience, or coming forward to say, actually, this has happened to me, or I feel like this. Did you feel like this? Are you experiencing that? And when you don't see anybody or many people who look like you, then it's almost like a barrier as such, and you just don't want to come forward. And the other thing I thought about is, well, who does the Black community go to? Who do we go to? And you might think of institutions or government organizations, and there is a long history of the Black community being mistreated and abused by these kind of institutions. So again, I think that's another barrier or a wall that might stop people from coming forward, because we're coming forward for help, but then at the same time, we're having to question, are we going to be helped? Are we going to be judged? Are we going to be mistreated? Are we even going to be gaslighted? I've heard stories of people being concerned about their pregnancies, and it's kind of been belittled. Is that going to happen if I share how I feel about my loss and my mental state? Am I going to be taken seriously? And then some people might decide that, no, I'm not going to be, and not reach out at all. And I also think within the Black community as well, like even just, I was reminded just hearing you speak, Patrice, that I have an aunt that's maybe about 20 years older than me. And it wasn't until I spoke about my loss that she shared that she had a loss 30, 40 or so years ago. I had no idea. And it just wasn't spoken about. And that's even within our family, never mind within, social settings within the Black community. And I think, I don't know, I think there can be long-held cultural beliefs. I think there's still a lot of taboo in general around the subject matter, which might stop people from talking about it. And also, a thing of, I don't know, it happened in the past, keeping it in the past and not really thinking it should be shared. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Tara. And I think two things that really stood out to me there were, where are safe spaces of support? Because there's so much to consider as a Black person of, you know, where feels safe, and is there anywhere where I can get support from people that look like me? And you said at the time of your loss, you just didn't know where those spaces were, unfortunately. And maybe there weren't those spaces there.
Even at the time when I started Mothers of Angels, which I think is maybe 3 years now, just before COVID, again, doing a lot of research. And when I was looking at organizations that specifically spoke about baby loss, I was not seeing Black faces. If I saw a Black face, it might be a woman having a cup of tea, but it wasn't a Black face that was speaking and saying, I'm heading this, or I'm a part of this organization, kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Tara. And I don't know if anyone else in the panel has any further thoughts.
I'll say, I think as well, in regards to the Black community, it's church where you would go to. But from my experience, it sometimes does more harm than good for me. Yeah, I'm being realistic, by saying, well, God knows best. So translating that's saying to me that I wasn't good enough to become a mother. Yeah. And then in regards to it's trauma, because obviously if this may be, and you haven't really got the opportunity for your family members who can really be quite transparent and give you the support that you need, it's heartbreaking. So it's like you're grieving for your child, which was your future, yeah, and then other people in your family or friends, they don't, and I think it's so uncomfortable that people just, stupid things come out of people's mouths, to be honest. That's for me. But for me, I think sounds for me was my lifeline. Although it was difficult because I was only one of the Black women who there, but I needed that help. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing is they're just the people around you, maybe they wished well, had the best intentions, but they just didn't know what to say.
Don't know. Yeah, and it made it worse.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Carolyn. I think some of the points you raised are some of the things we're going to look at throughout this discussion in terms of what do you say, what is helpful, and the impact that faith can play in someone's loss as well. So thank you for sharing that so far. And I mean, I know, Tari, you touched on, the fact that your aunt experienced a loss and you just had no idea until you shared about your own loss. And it does feel like older generations didn't talk or still don't talk so much about loss. It's a lot more difficult for so many different reasons. And I just wonder, and I'm going to direct this question to Carol firstly, do you think attitudes towards acknowledging and expressing grief are changing?
Wow. Are they changing? I think there's progress. Just like right now, today, being able to kind of have these conversations now and being able to be vulnerable and asking for help. I think we've got a long way to go, but I think every family or mother or father who's lost a child, I think it's dependent. It's not like one fits all. So I think that everybody's family may be different, So I'm not going to say that it's like all the Black community, they shut down and things
Yeah.
like that. I think we have to be fair. I think that in regards to support, I think that needs to still be built, like what you guys are doing today, in regards to acknowledging in terms of the Black community do need the support that they require, because obviously I work for mental health, and basically the statistics is that Black women and Black men are the ones more than likely to be sectioned, because we don't really talk until it then comes to a point where you haven't got the capacity now, so you've been sectioned. So I think for me, on my journey, I had to I had to ask for help, and even though the people didn't look like me, yeah, and sometimes they didn't understand me, I still had to try to, in regards to my well-being, my grief. There's many a times, and I'm going to be really honest, that I contemplated suicide because the pain was so kind of like no words could actually express.
Yeah.
But I got through that. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that we're on track.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your honesty, Carol, in sharing that with us. And as you said, things have changed, but there's a lot more to do. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yes, I do. So going back to the question, have attitudes towards grief changed? I think attitudes have shifted and softened a little with time. I still think there's a general belief that Black people should carry themselves and behave in a certain way, putting on a show of strength and holding it together. Any grieving or showing of emotion should be done privately. The views and opinions about how we're seen by other people is still a big concern for a lot of people in the Black community. Grief is a feeling that people get after suffering a bereavement, and it's a perfectly natural reaction. We need to normalise mourning and grief, irrespective of race, gender, religion, or any other characteristic. We know everybody struggles with the death process. Black people are no different in this respect. If we've not been taught to talk about how we feel and develop our emotional intelligence, then we can continue to bury our feelings and sit in difficult places. Talking like this, how we are about grief in a dedicated space, is so important. My wish is that services can adapt and better meet the needs of all their users. And I just want to go back to something Carol said. You'll hear me say we a lot, and I am talking generally, because not every Black person would have had the same experience.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And yeah, that's a good clarification. I think what stood out for me there is this need to be strong. And again, that's something that a lot of people relate to, but I think many people in the Black community relate to that feeling of needing to be strong, having to carry on and put on a brave face as if you're okay, even when you're not. And I think that that's also something that men experience as well. So, you know, at a time of loss, men may go into doing the more practical side of things, whether that's planning a funeral, whether that's taking care of the family. And I just wanted to ask Tunji, do you feel that's how men manage their grief and show that they're strong? And do you think it's harder for men to grieve? Maybe even for Black men in particular, specifically
Hi.
to grief?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking that. I think there's lots of thoughts that go into my mind in answer to that question. And I think I'll try and see if I can remember all of them. But the first thing that points out to me is that, especially as a man, let alone a black man, it's almost as if it's almost as if you haven't got the right to grieve because, well, in a way, I'm speaking of personal experience as well. I'm gonna say you haven't got the right to grieve because it hasn't happened to your body or it doesn't happen in your body. Does that mean so the bond is not quite the same? Doesn't make sense as a woman. So that's one aspect of it. The fact that it hasn't happened, it has happened to you in the terms of the emotions and it's your partner or whatever the case may be, but in terms of it actually happening physically in your body, it hasn't happened to you. So I feel the next step I feel that men want to do, especially from my experience, is the fact that you want to make things practically okay. So is your partner feeling okay? And in terms of if there is a stillbirth, I guess it's the preparation of things, and it's that whole thing of going into taking care of things mode. Does it make sense? The practicality of things. And I feel, maybe in a way that's their way of, again, only from my personal experience, I feel like I only have a window of grief or a window of sadness. And once that window closes, I haven't got that window anymore. And this is obviously something that I have been working on or would like to work on. It's the fact that having grown up by myself and whatever the case may be, it's almost as if I haven't got time to grieve. I have to do it in this short space of time and move on quickly. And there's those of things that Carol has said earlier, and I think Ryan also mentioned about it, and the fact of you being strong. And I think generally as Black people, there's that thing of strength, even from history and all that things. And it's only becoming in the last few years that people are understanding that, no, that strength is something that has been imposed on us and we have accepted it. And so that whole thing of don't let your business out or you have to show your strength, don't let people know you're suffering, that kind of thing. That goes, I feel, again, from my personal experience, that's amplified as a Black man. You feel like, okay, I can't let people see me. Well, you're not even thinking about it, you just go into it. I didn't think about it, I just went into it. And I feel like if I had time to sit down or someone sat with me and really dug in, then I'd probably say, yeah, I guess I am grieving. But it was hard for me to grieve. I remember when we were told, I mean, my wife has, we've had, I think, 3 or 4. I mean, we have 2 children now, but we had 2 before the first, and I think 1 before the second child. And I remember the first one, that was the most grueling for me. And it was like, went to the hospital, and it's the way it was broken down to us as well. It wasn't like, sit down, we're about to tell you something. It was just more like, that's happened kind of thing. And in my head, I rationalize things a lot. I have conversations that haven't quite happened. And in my head, I was saying to the woman, didn't say it quite, that although you might have experienced this a lot because you're a nurse or a midwife, whatever the case may be, this is our first time experiencing this. And so I think after like a few seconds after we were told, I was crying. My wife was crying. I think after maybe a minute, I started crying and I went into practical mode. And that was me. I can't say I was my way of grieving. It was just me of like, okay, I had my window of grief. And now it's just time to, do the practical things and move on. And I guess in a way, the other miscarriages I don't think I connected to them as much. And that was my way of thinking. It's almost as if you've tripped over once, it really hurts. You trip over the next time, it's like, okay, just get up, dust yourself up, trip over again, you get up. It's almost like, okay, well, I'm going to keep tripping over until I stop tripping over. I'm going to just have to get up. So the other miscarriages weren't, and my wife has said that it felt like I was unavailable emotionally because I just didn't connect. I didn't really connect because it's happened. And so I was just more like, is she okay? Is that done? Is this done? Is she eating? Are we eating? So yeah, I hope I'm answering your question. I just feel like there's that thing of in as much as people don't think it, especially as a man or a Black man or anti-Black man, it's just that thing where you go into it straight away because it's something that's deep rooted in you that you just have to sort things out. And again, like I said earlier, you're the man. It didn't happen to your body, so how dare you feel like you need to grieve?
Wow, thank you, Tunji, so much. And definitely, you know, that answered the question. And yeah, I think just, you know, what you said around just having to be strong, and it's not even something that you think about, it's just something that's there, so that when, you know, something like this happened, you know, your window to grieve was actually quite small. And then you just moved on to making sure your wife was okay, making sure everything that needed to be done was done. And also there was a little bit of feeling like, well, this didn't actually happen to me. It's not my body, so should I be grieving in the same way? And yeah, I really thank you for sharing that. And I guess I would ask Ryan, how can we encourage men to talk more?
I just want to touch on something Tunji said quickly. Don't put your business out there. And that was a message I got growing up over and over again. And I think there's a lot of overlap in what we say. A lot of these themes are quite common. Going back to the question, I feel Black men are often stuck between a rock and a hard place, feeling that they need to be seen as the strong Black man that is looking after their wife, partner, family, while having to deal with feelings of grief they don't feel they can openly express. Like Tunji said, it didn't happen to me, so I need to be the supportive one. I don't feel men are not enabled or encouraged to show their grief, but I often feel it's just overlooked. It's not given any thought. The sympathy tends to be extended towards the mother that has lost their baby. Well wishes and support are directed towards both parents. We can encourage men to talk more by looking at the man as an individual in grief as well, and asking how he is feeling about the loss of the baby. I think that sometimes taking part in a practical task when talking to men can alleviate some of the stigma men experience around talking about feelings. I'm sure you've all asked somebody how they're feeling before, and they've said, I'm fine. And you can clearly see they're not fine. And some people will ask, how are you doing, as a greeting. They're not necessarily interested. It's like, oh, hi, how are you? And these can be throwaway comments sometimes. But yeah, so like I said, maybe having these conversations while doing a practical task is a good approach. Have a game of pool, do some gardening, or go for a walk. Sometimes people don't want to talk about loss, and that's okay. But having some time away from the grief process can do them some good and provide some self-care time.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for sharing that. And I like what you shared about connecting the talking to something else as well. Maybe it feels that might make it feel a bit easier to talk about the loss. This wasn't one of the questions I was going to ask, but there you go. I did want to go back to you, Tunji. So please share.
Yes, sorry. Let me just lower my hand. I wanted to kind of also not reiterate, but also wanted to add on to the fact that I know that we're talking about child loss here, but I think even as a man, even when there is a child involved, what I found annoying, especially with my first child, is the fact that whenever the what they call the home nurse, no, health nurse, whatever, the people that visit, health visitor, I was never addressed. I was never asked how I'm doing. I never was asked if I was resting, but it was always geared at the woman. So you can imagine if there is a baby loss, everything, just as Ryan said, is geared towards it's always geared towards the woman, which and I think, yeah, rightly so. But I feel, and another thing that Ryan said is that lately I've been seeing these things pop up on various social media thing, or the fact that it feels as if the love for a man is conditional. So if you can't provide X, Y, and Z, be it money or strength or protection, then you're useless, you're a waste of space. So if you don't come with these things, and I think in as much as those things may not have been said directly to us, it's that inbuilt thing of the fact that if you're not strong, then you're just not really, if you're not strong, you're not rich, you're not bringing anything to the table, then there's, so, and that goes on various aspects or spectrum, should I say. And so therefore having men really, and I feel also that just as Ryan said again about people's passing or how are you doing, I think it takes, especially with me anyway, it takes you kind of really sitting down and saying, I'm not leaving you until you tell me how you really feel. Does it make sense? And I feel like we just kind of, men generally, again, I speak for myself, not all men, but generally there's that thing of, I just need to get on with things. And so therefore, having that space and time to really dig into how you really feel about it. We compartmentalize a lot. And sometimes those compartments are open and it might end up badly, but things are put in compartments and often at times are not dealt with. So yeah, so I hope that is gearing towards what you're going to ask, but I just wanted to add on to that fact that even when women or partners have babies, the men are often sidelined most of the time.
Yeah. If you do have a noise, thank you. I completely agree what you're saying, Tunjin. I think sometimes we can complicate things, and I think what you just said there was really simple, that you just want someone to sit you down and just genuinely ask, how are you doing? Are you okay? And just stay there and give you that time to share how you're doing. I do just want to say, I see that some people do have their hands up, and if you could we just want to do this first part with just the panel, but please do remember your questions because we're going to come to them at the end of the panel discussion. If you feel like you might forget, you can also put them in the chat as well, but we definitely want to hear your opinions and thoughts after the panel discussion. So Tara, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was so interesting hearing Tunji speak. I've known Tunji for a while, and I knew Tunji when I had my loss. And I remember specifically Tunji creating space and time for the two of us to talk to each other all together and for him to offer me support. So it's just making me think of the way that a man or a Black man might offer support to the bereaved mother, but then again, them getting that back in return, are they creating the same space and time for themselves as well? So I just thought it was really interesting. And yeah, the memory, we met in Islington in a coffee shop, and he was like, I'm meeting up with you. And he was really caring. And yeah, I just thought to myself, men need that back too.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Tara, and thank you, Tunji, for being so open. I think the question that I was going to ask you, and not to put you on the spot or as the spokesperson for all men, but was just what support do you think is needed for men? And I think in part you have answered that, is just giving space to talk.
Yeah, I think if anything, that is it, the space to talk, just to. I know it's a bit, I mean, in a way, me uttering what I'm about to say feels contradictory to how my upbringing, and this is just, when I say upbringing, I'm not talking about my parents, I'm talking about society, have gone through society. The fact that you are enough, even if you don't bring enough, does that make sense? I feel me saying that feels contradictory because I will always feel like I need to bring enough. But having the knowledge that you are enough, even if you don't bring enough, I think that's very helpful. And I think it would open doors. I don't know, like, again, it feels as if there's this magnetic opposite that are like repelling each other as I'm talking, because it's like, it doesn't quite sit right in my head, but it is the truth. The fact that you can't just be a human being and be loved or be cared about. We want to hear how you feel about certain situations. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, or you protected, you provided, or whatever the case may be. And it's that whole thing. I feel that would probably allow men it would have been nice to hear those things. It would have been nice to know those things. Does that make sense? Even if it would take time for it to sip in, I think it's good to hear that, you know, again, it's weird me saying it, but it's the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely is the truth. I've just noticed your mic has come off, Tara. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like in part you're saying your feelings are valid no matter what. It's not dependent on how much you earn, how much you can help. Doesn't matter. Those things don't matter. Your feelings are valid and you deserve that space just as much as anyone else. But it doesn't always feel like that. And it feels, I think it's telling that you know that's true, but it feels wrong saying it. Yeah. And maybe that goes back in part to things have improved, but there's still so much more to do. Carry on, Tunji.
No, I was just I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but it was just more the fact of that it feels weak to say that there's nothing you can provide without the things that you're meant to provide. It feels like a weakness, and I feel like, again, it's not something like I'm thinking I don't want to be weak. It's just that whole thing that my default approach is to be strong. Does that make sense? And I think that's just kind of in the same way. That's why I felt weird saying it, because it's like, oh, you know, you're being weak because you want to, not because you want to talk about your feelings, but because you want to be here and just be without the things that you're supposedly meant to provide. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Carol?
Can I just say, when you say be weak, is weak, being weak is a weakness, but sometimes as a Black man, it's okay, and you give yourself permission to do so. It is about giving us position to be weak. And also as well, you lost a child. You were the one who was part of the making of your baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, and I think that as a woman, you obviously, you're right, you know, obviously we carry the child and then the grief. But Tunde, I kind of think that I just kind of would like to salute you in regards to how well and now in regards to being very vulnerable. So I salute you.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you so much. It's really appreciate what you've shared and just being so open and honest with us here. Brian, if we take your point and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what Tunji said. When you go for a bereavement or a loss, he used the term default setting. And the first thing you go to is, who am I? What is my identity? I'm a strong Black man. You shut down your feelings, you pretend everything's okay, and get on. And I think when you have that in you, it's very hard to take a step back and say, I need something here. You just get caught in that kind of, who am I? What can I provide? Kind of thing. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that angle as well. I missed a little bit because of connection, but I think you were saying when something like this happens, when you experience a loss, you go to kind of the default of how you're supposed to act. So I really appreciate, you know, all of your answers on this question. I think it's been really important to hear how men feel. I do just want to share that some information has been posted in the chat on the different avenues of support that we have specifically for men at SANS. We do have SANS FC, which is a way for men and bereaved men to connect through their love of sport. We have an online closed Facebook group, which is, again, bereaved dads supporting each other. And we have monthly online support meetings for dads as well. I believe the next one is happening on the 10th of November. And that, the link to the next online support meeting has been posted in the chat in case anyone would like to join or to share with anyone. So moving on to our next question, many things affect how we grieve, such as family, customs, and faith. No doubt, and Carol shared this earlier, we've heard those phrases, "it was God's will," which could stop bereaved parents from reaching out for support that is vital to them. Although those phrases do have, the best of intentions. So Tara, I wanted to ask you, what can be the impact of faith on someone's grief journey?
I definitely think it's important to acknowledge or to recognize if the lady or the man who have had the loss, if they do have a particular faith, a religion or spirituality that they subscribe to, I should say, because a lot of the time the way that a person will process their grief is through the lens of their faith. I want to say it's almost like a guideline. I don't know if guideline is the right words, but like something to follow, whatever their faith is, that the way that they grieve might follow along the steps of their faith or whatever components there are to their faith. And I think it will help, or it will form how they process the loss. It will form whether there's an acceptance or not of the loss, and then also a conclusion as to why, which brings in the whole thing of God's will, which can happen with some faiths as well. And also one of the things that I found, I'm a Christian, and I found myself very conflicted when I was going through my grief process, because there were guidelines, if you like, or certain steps that you would follow in your faith. But the first thing I questioned was my faith in these very guidelines that I was following after my loss, because it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't follow on. God loves me so much. Why did this happen? And then it's almost like you think God loves you, you'll have a good life. But then actually this very terrible thing has just happened. It doesn't kind of add up or match with God loving you and a very terrible thing that happens. So yeah, in terms of my particular faith, it fell away drastically. And again, there was lots of conflicts that was provided. And the whole God's will thing is just, that was quite a difficult thing to grapple with at the time. I think it's important to understand that a person might have their faith, but they're still that person, they're still who they are. And I think it's okay to be you and to carry your own feelings, whatever they are, at the time of your loss. And it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of, I don't know, it's like the person is the person, and then their faith is their faith. If you see what I mean, they can still be allowed to feel whatever they feel and whatever they're going through. And I think if they find that there's a conflict, I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think it's quite normal to question your faith going through a bereavement or a loss, particularly of this type. I don't think that means you're a bad person or anything. I think there can be a lot of condemnation or a lot of feelings of you're not a good person if you question your faith. If you don't want to go to church one Sunday, even, I didn't go to church for a very long time. And I think it's important for people around you in your faith-based community to understand and to acknowledge that as well. That again, we come back to the space and time that I think is very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think what stands out to me is your faith can kind of give a guideline, or guidelines, I think is the word you used, of how to process your grief, but also you should be allowed to process those feelings.
Outside of it, if you want.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to things like the afterlife, a person's faith, whether you believe your baby is in heaven or whether you don't have that belief, even that is involved in faith as well. So I think it's also good to recognize if the individual has that belief or that faith system, or if they don't as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your own personal story there as well. Ryan, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, listening to Tara there, I think those phrases, God takes all the best ones, they've gone to a better place. I think they're often said so that the person saying them finds it easier to talk to someone about their grief and loss. So it's almost like they're saying that without actually addressing the issue. And what they could be saying is, how are you feeling? What do you need? Is there anything I can do? And I think it's often overlooked.
Yeah.
I'd like to add also that, again, just to reiterate what Ryan was saying, I feel like, and I'm not a counselor, I'm not a trained counselor, although I probably should. But anyway, I feel sometimes I think you should just be available. And I think people often feel like you need to talk when you're with someone who's grieving or whatever the case may be. And I think sometimes it's just being with them. And I feel that's also the mistake that I feel like most people, when I say most people in faith, I can only say from the Christian perspective, because I'm a Christian myself, is that they just feel they need to say things to encourage you. Whereas sometimes you just being there is an encouragement. You coming to cook is an encouragement. And I feel generally around the world, sometimes you just want someone to be there. And I think knowing the person is there, or the person would always be there, or the person can be there, what might just give you the openness to talk, and you don't have to find the right words to say. And I think that's what is an issue, is people feel they need to find the right words to say, and in doing that they say the wrong things. Where sometimes I just be there, which I feel has worked. When I say for me, I mean has worked, me being there for friends, where I don't say much, just be there, really.
Yeah.
Can I just add as well, it's just about listening. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the silence. And sometimes we need that silence to be able to process what's going on. Or, you're just crying because you're overwhelmed, and the pain that you're going through, you can't control it. And by just listening makes a big difference in regards to recovery, rather than your church sisters or brothers and stuff like that would be saying, oh, well, do this, do that. You're not in my shoes. You're not in my shoes. So
I remember, I remember my sister who had a loss received some flowers from a lady at church in the post, and it had something similar to God's will, or, God knows everything. And that may be fair enough and true for her philosophy. But for my sister to receive that so early on, that was just like, no, she just was not happy at all about that.
Yeah. And I am keeping an eye on comments in the chat, and we will come back to them, but I've just seen one come up that says, just saying that you don't know what to say says it all, and is much better than using those unhelpful phrases. And I think that kind of pulls in what you all were saying. Sometimes just kind of sit and be there, and it might be uncomfortable for the person to not say anything. I think there's a natural tendency to want to fix things. So a lot of these phrases, most of the time the phrases will come with good intentions, but that's maybe more about the person who feels uncomfortable And really, if we want to help someone, we have to, you know, deal with our stuff and sit with the person as they need. And maybe it's less about what you say and just about being there for them. I do at this point just want to share, we are going to share a link to the event that Tara ran during Baby Loss Awareness Week, and it was about spirituality and baby loss. I was able to attend virtually, and she had 2 wonderful panel members join her. So I would encourage you all, if you can, to take the time and to watch that video as well. So I think that goes into a lot more detail about this question. So we will be sharing that link. And we are just going to move on to the next question, which is, and this is to Carol, if I could ask what your experience was in terms of the care you received from, whether it be family, friends, community, or healthcare. Was your baby spoken about? Were you happy with your care? Do you think you would have been treated differently, or your baby spoken about more if they had survived?
Okay, I've lost 2 children, as I said previously, and my first child, I have fibroids, so basically my fibroids, I couldn't have an actual birth, and so, you know, in regards to, because I was 35 months, yeah, and basically the long and the short of it is, when I did my birthing plan, they told me that I have to have a cesarean, because my baby was in my birth canal. So basically the long and the short of it is, when she died and I was at I was at the hospital at that time, in terms of, yeah, and they told me that my child had died. Then what they had done to me is that they said to me, take this tablet and come back the next day. So I said, what's that for? And they basically just take it and then come back the next day. I didn't take it because I knew that that wasn't the right thing to do. But basically the long and the short of it is, they wanted to induce me. So if I did get induced, yeah, then I would have bled to death. So I wouldn't be here today. So basically I had to then therefore get a new consultant, and they were the ones that then gave me the information, and then I had to have a cesarean. So my point in terms of sharing this is, obviously that's like 14, 15 years ago, yeah, but the harm that it has caused, and just because obviously I'm a Black woman, yeah, and at that time my partner wasn't with me, so I was on my own, yeah, it's very difficult in regards to the support you get if you were a Caucasian, because I've seen it, yeah, and I'm going to be real, to a Black woman who perhaps maybe there's no real kind of care or support. So that in itself, it caused so much more harm in terms of my recovery, because there was no worth.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for sharing that, Carol, and I'm so saddened to hear that was your experience. And I guess as we are talking about your loss, and after the poor care that you received, did that make you want to reach out more, or did it make you want to not reach out for support after that experience?
I had to, it wasn't like it was a choice. The only way I knew that I can move forward was to ask for help, and SANS played a big part in that. And even though I was like the only Black woman there, I had to still kind of, I couldn't let that stop me from getting the support that I needed in terms of, before COVID, it was support groups, and you can speak, kind of then connect with other mothers. So sometimes it isn't just about in terms of, it's great to have your own race, but it's also great where you know other mothers who have gone through the same thing. And yes, there's different cultures, but it's just about getting the support that I needed at that time, so that I could then therefore start the recovery journey.
And once again, Carol, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I think that I am going to pause because I've seen Tara's hand go up.
Sorry, just to add to what Carol was saying then, it's really sad, but it just goes to show you, because I remember after my loss, I was told, take this tablet as well. And again, with very little explanation as to what this is actually going to do. I did take it, and I think, I can't remember if it was 24 hours or even 48 hours, a day, two and a day and a half, I had to come back, and I was induced, but I still didn't properly understand what was going to happen. And I wasn't with the partner or the father at the time. I did have my mother and sister supporting me. So there was that presence that was seen, but then, you know, there just wasn't that thorough explanation or care as well. And it's just sad to hear that we both have, or we're both saying similar things regarding the not thorough care or explanation regarding it. And I did have support in the form of a counsellor. The NHS, I think someone at the hospital suggested that I go to the counsellor, and the NHS provided counselling for me. So I was supported that way. But I think it would have been amazing if I knew about support groups at the time that I could go to, or just a community of other women who have experienced that loss as well. And I didn't have that support at the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Tara. And, you know, it's heartbreaking to hear that you both had the same experience, but I think we know that it's not uncommon. And unfortunately, you know, this panel time has gone really quickly, but I do just want to share, we are going to share in the chat some reports that have come out in this last year that highlight the poor maternity care that Black women have faced. So we're going to share the 5 Times More report. We're going to share the Birth Rights Inquiry into Racial Injustice. We're also going to share the survey results of, or the results of our survey that we conducted at SANS on the experiences of bereavement care for Black and South Asian families. Again, for those of you that haven't read them or heard of them, I would encourage you to read them. They are really informative. And I also do want to share, we are going to share a link about becoming a befriender. We have discussed this evening that first and foremost, you know, Carol shared a few times, she had to reach out for support. And first and foremost, I think parents want support from someone who has been through what they've been through, or at least have a good understanding of what they've been through. But it would be so much better if, you know, people had support from people that looked like them as well. And that's something that came out from our survey. And so if there is anyone on here that is interested in becoming a befriender, we're going to share a link that has information on what it means to be a befriender. And our befrienders are volunteers who support other parents and family members who've experienced a loss, and also the requirements to become a befriender and how you can sign up for the training if that's something that you want to do. I I do think it's so important, and whilst I and the team at SANS are working on creating more spaces of support for the Black community, I just wanted to share this way that you could get involved as well, if that's something that anyone wants to do. I'm going to wrap it up here. I think, we did have a few more questions, but also we feel that it's important to give this second hour to everyone that's here to ask questions and to share experiences. We really think that's important. But before we wrap up this panel discussion, I just want to hand back over to the panel members to give them a chance to share any final thoughts with us. So if we start with Tara.
Thought you was going to say me first. I think final thoughts, I would say, so two sides. I would say to anybody who is, I don't know, works with people who have experienced loss, thinking about setting up organizations and things like that, especially if you are Black, I think representation matters. Definitely. I think if you've had a loss, you need to see more people who look like you talking about it, not just, a picture on a poster or something, but actually engaging with them somehow, or or sharing your story if you're a Black person on the call who has experienced loss and you feel that you're ready to. I think that is a good way to kind of support other Black women and men who have experienced loss as well.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. I missed a little bit, but I think that's because my connection's unstable. I hope everyone else heard what you shared. I'm going to hand over now to Tunji.
Hi. Parting thoughts. I mean, I've been looking around. I don't know if there are any other men in here, especially any other Black men. I just wanted to say that it's okay to cry. If that's what you want to do, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel out of control. But I'm going to say there is help out there, even though I don't know much about where the help is. But it's good. What our advice is, and also for the ladies or other who are here, and you want to advise men, I think maybe find out where there's help and point them to it. Even I guess I'm notorious as well for asking for help, but then I do have friends who would just pay for the help and say, I've paid for it, you go to it. So I would say that, if you are there amongst all the amazing people who are here and you're a man, Black man, it's okay to feel like you need help and seek help. And if you can find help for the men in your life, the Black men in your life, do find help. Pay for it, tell them, drive them there. I think it's just sometimes it's the practicality of things. Men are like that. We like practical things. Well, for me anyway, not generalize. It's practical things. Do it, set it up and say, listen, I've done it. You all need to do is turn up. And I think that would be helpful. Hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Tunji. Carol?
Okay. I think it's about you, and each and every one of us grieves differently. So I would say whatever works for you, do it. Yeah. If the case may be, it's being vulnerable is a skill and it's a strength. It's not a weakness to be vulnerable. And sometimes you haven't got the capacity to kind of constantly pull down your grief. You've just got to let it go.
Yeah.
And there are different organisations out there. As I said, SANS was really helpful for me. But as Tara, she's got a great organisation as well. So just seek out. And I think as well, one of the challenges for me was going back to work. Yeah. So it is about all of these kind of things, that the support that you need, and ask for help. So perhaps maybe if you go back to work and if you want some counselling, your organisation can give you that if you can't get it on the NHS, because obviously at the moment it's really hard to. Just take what you can take at the moment until you're in a better position. But just it's all about self-care. And I would say each and every one of you, you're a beautiful woman, mother. You are still a mother, yeah, regardless, yeah, and father, yeah. So all I would say is just take minute by minute, not even day by day.
Thank you so much, Carol. And Brian.
I think it's really good we've had this panel and everyone today in this conversation. I think it's really needed. I just want to share a quote as my final thought. I'm sure you've all heard this one before. The old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. Sometimes we need to ask ourselves what happens to that village when the parents have a baby loss.
Wow, I think that's a really interesting thought to kind of leave us with. Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panel members for just being here, for being so open, for being so honest and engaging in this discussion. I'm sure everyone has found it really, really helpful. So thank you so much. I just want to say that although now we have come to the end of the panel discussion, we do have time now. So we have about 50 minutes for you to ask any questions directed at the panel, or to share any experiences that you would like to share. This is a safe space. We want this to be a safe space. So I will now go and check, the messages and the comments, and we will go through those. But also, if there is anything anyone would like to say, please use the raise hand function and I will come to you. I would just also want to say that we will be sharing a feedback form at the end, and we'd be really grateful if you could complete that, just to help us with planning more of these in the future. So yeah, if anyone does have any comments, anything they would like to share, please do raise your hand so I can come to you. There were some comments, and I think the comments really did start when we were talking about the importance of men talking and there being space for men. There was a comment that said, I think this is when we were about just asking someone how they are, and the comment was, I totally agree. Ask how someone is, then ask again and really mean it. I think there was a comment around, how are you, being a greeting, and often it's not a phrase that's really meant. So, and I think that's something that I really picked up from the discussion around, it was one of the questions that we never got to, but I think you all really covered, what to say to someone that's experienced a loss. And I think, asking how someone is really important. Yvonne, I can see your hand is raised.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. It's been yeah, it's been amazing. I think seeing Black people who look like me, talking about baby loss. I lost my daughter. My daughter was stillborn in August. And I think something that I'm struggling with at the moment, or kind of questions that I have, is so she died after the consultant told the hospital that she needed to be delivered because there was an issue with the blood flow. So she was scanned at 5 p.m. and they didn't deliver her. They left us waiting in a room for 4 hours because they said they didn't have any beds. And she died in that time. And in the beginning, I didn't really kind of relate. I knew what had happened was negligence, but I didn't necessarily relate it to the color of my skin and any possible, basically the impact of me being Black and how quickly they reacted or how much they prioritized us and my baby. And I think the more and more I kind of have discussions in safe places, even not necessarily just with people who are Black, even like, even one of my white friends said to me, she's blonde with blue eyes, and she said to me, if you looked like me, that wouldn't have happened. And I guess my question is, how, first of all, how do you identify if, because I don't want to pull that card, if that makes sense. I don't want to kind of be like, yeah, they acted like this because we're Black, etc. if it wasn't that. But how do you identify that? And if you can identify it, kind of what is your advice around that? Or is there support around that? Because ultimately I feel like my child was murdered. That's generally how I feel. I feel like she was killed. I feel like if they gave her if they delivered her like they were told to and put her in an incubator and gave her what she needed, she most likely would have survived. So yeah, I guess my question is like, how do you, as a Black woman and even a Black man, how do you identify in the healthcare system when it's not overt, when it's not so obvious? How do you identify when that has an impact? And what do you do?
Firstly, Yvonne, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and I'm so sorry for what you have been through. I don't know if anyone in the panel would like to answer that question.
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, just as Patricia said, it's really hard when you lose someone, and especially when it feels it's clear that it's negligence. I think my advice, if I was to have any, sorry, yes, sorry about this.
That's okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'm coming. Sorry, that's my son. I apologize for that. What I was going to say was that I feel that regardless of whether you can identify it being a racial thing or not, I think you have every right to challenge it. I think sometimes it's almost as if we're waiting for it to be justified that it is a racial thing. I think regardless, you should challenge it. In obviously I'm not there and I can't see everything that was happening around. It's hard to identify whether or not things would have been different if you looked different, right? Because we weren't there. But the fact of the matter is, I think you should challenge it. And I think in support of your challenge, it would be like, would things be different if I looked if I was a white person, basically. Again, it's negligence. And I think that just needs to be challenged regardless of what it is. It needs to be challenged, and that needs to be a point. And I think a supporting thing is like, this is how you feel, because how you feel is important. How you feel matters. How you feel is relevant. So if you feel that it's because I look a certain way, that's why the negligence was further, then add that to your support, add that to your complaint, so to say. But I think regardless, this is how you feel, then go ahead. I think, like I said, it's hard to say. And my thing is, the reason I'm saying that is because I say challenge you regardless, is because in as much as we face racial bias and all kinds of things in various forms and in various places, I think how you see yourself should be important. You're not just a Black person, you are a human being. And I think always always attack things from a human perspective. As in, I'm a human being. I have the right to be treated in a certain way. My child should have been treated in a certain way because we're human beings. And then the supporting is the fact is, okay, but if I looked differently, would your urgency be more? Does that make sense? Hope I'm making sense. So you're a human being, and I think go from that perspective and everything as a support, because I don't know, maybe because I'm a Black person, that's why I'm saying it, but I don't see you as a Black person. I see you as a person. And I think that's where things get a bit crazy, is the fact that others need to see you as a human being and not just a Black person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. That would be my thing, is to challenge it regardless and get support as much as possible. I'm sure if you need support from SANS, I'm sure they can give you more support in terms of like maybe places to go that can get you the support. But I say challenge it, and
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, Yvonne, I'm so sorry to hear of your loss, and I'm sorry to hear of the way that you was treated as well. I've seen in the chat that Jen from SANS has posted some advice and some steps that you can follow. I'm not sure if you've seen that as yet. And also the two organisations that come to mind are 5 Times More and the Motherhood Group, and they specifically advocate for maternal rights for Black women. So I feel like even though I'm not fully clued up on the guidelines regarding maternal rights and the steps that you can take, I know that 5 Times More and the Mother Group specifically advocate for that. So I think that there'd be a good place for you, or good people for you to contact, to find out the things that you can do to find out more regarding what happened with you and your loss. And then also Jen has posted in the group as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. And I would just say again, you know, we are here to help and support you in any way that we can as well. And thank you for sharing, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
So sorry, I just wanted to ask from Yvonne if you have a good support network, and I think that you know, regardless of what way you're going to go through, but I just hope that you have a good support. I think if I remember rightly, Ryan was saying that it takes a village to raise a child. I think you know, you're a human being. Again, I always go from a human perspective. You're a person, you need to be heard, and you need the support. So I hope you do have an amazing support system that is helping you through this time.
Yeah, I think that I've been very intentional with like definitely like reaching out, or even like attending like events around kind of baby loss, because I think like being around other men and women that have experienced baby loss is something that has really helped me, in like kind of hearing from other parents, and also I think that this is very new for like my family. So I am Nigerian, and I think the way I'm very expressive naturally, so the way I've dealt with losing Nasia has been very open, and I've made it very clear that I refuse to ever let her name die. And in that, my family have they've almost like adapted and adjusted with me, which has been really good to see. And there's a level of, I'm going to call it kind of liberation, because I agree in terms of the things that are being said in the beginning about, you know, naturally kind of, you know, growing up, you're told, you know, don't talk about your business, or, you know, if something bad happens, you kind of just kind of get on with it. And definitely, I know I've lived my life in a way where I've been in survival mode. So something traumatic might happen and I just continue and I continue. But losing my child is a situation that I have to go through this grieving process to be able to come out of it somewhat in a way that I can continue to function. And I'm aware of that. It's not, I can't just sweep it under the carpet. And that's why I'm very intentional about trying to get the support. So I think because I've done that, I've built, you know, quite a good support network around me, and anyone and anything that doesn't feel safe. So I'm a Christian as well. And even kind of navigating my faith around what has happened has also, it's been quite difficult, but also I understand God now in a different way. But equally, that I've been in kind of like environments where I've pretty much been told, don't drag this on. Most people lose their first child. But I know that doesn't come from a bad place. That's literally how that person, who's also a Christian, dealt with their loss. But that's not a safe space for me. So I remove myself from anywhere that doesn't feel safe now, and make sure that I position myself in places that I can grieve and express. Because like I said, I will never, ever let my child's name be forgotten, because what happened to her was just so bad.
Yeah. And once again, I just thank you so much for sharing and being so open with us. I know that it's not easy for you to do that. But yeah, I thank you for sharing your experience and just sharing the importance of finding those safe spaces and not giving up, fighting for what you deserve in terms of, you know, making a complaint if that's what you want to do, and also remembering your daughter and not letting her being forgotten. So yeah, thank you once again for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And I believe that my email address is going to be shared at the end. I think it's in the feedback form. So please do reach out to us at SANS. Please do reach out to me. We are here to help you in any way that we can.
Thank you.
I don't know if there is anyone else that had a question or who wanted to share anything with the panel. We do have some questions and comments in the chat box, but I did just want to give a few moments to anyone else, and we still do have time if anyone would like to ask something at any point. We did have a comment from Nanajua, who just shared her experience of well, I will read the comment, and she said, when we went through our loss, I immediately saw that the midwives didn't seem to even notice my husband. So this goes back to what you were sharing, Tunji. I spoke to my mum, who is a retired midwife, about it, and she said, don't take it personally, but a midwife's job is to care for the woman. Whilst this is true, you cannot sideline the man. So from the very beginning, the man is not even being brought into the situation. He's not being validated. Healthcare professionals really need to work on this. Again, we have another comment that says both mum and dad need and deserve support. And there was a thanks to you, Tunji. for showing an incredible amount of strength and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, which again goes back to the point of that almost that feeling of contradiction of having an incredible amount of strength by allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Often it doesn't feel like being vulnerable is strong, but that's definitely what we've picked up today. So thank you for that. And I guess following on from the comment about the experience in hospital, there is a question, which is there any advice you could give to student midwives in terms of looking after individuals who are experiencing a baby loss? So I don't know if there are any of our panel members who would feel comfortable to answer that question. And maybe, obviously, I know you're getting these questions on the spot, so take some time to maybe think about that first.
So I read the question earlier. So if I speak now, oh, you can hear me. It says I'm mute. Oh no. Oh, yes, you can hear me. Right. Sorry. What I would say to that is, I guess, I think again, it's. I'm not saying forget your learning, but I think it's doing what's in front of you. What's in front of you is a mother and a father, possibly a mother and her mother, whatever, whoever's there, need that care. The thing is, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Get a colleague or a senior person. That, again, I'm only talking from experience and also just as a human being. I think it's just acknowledging that this has happened. And it's the way, if you don't know how to break the news to them, get a professional to break it to them. Explain to the professional, because I think in our case, the lady that actually was doing the scanning, she knew, but she didn't, I don't think she knew how to say. So she went to get a colleague. And I don't think she said to the colleague, I haven't told the parents. She just said, I'm looking at this and it doesn't, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. And the senior midwife, whatever the case may be, I don't know what I think she was a midwife, said, oh yeah, so okay, so it's a miscarriage. She was saying it to her colleague, not even to us. Does that make sense? I think it's those things whereby I think it's that whole thing of just making sure that everyone is informed as you go along. I mean, again, there's never a perfect answer. Does that make sense in terms of when those things happen? But I feel it's like caring. I think the first point of note is caring for the people who you're breaking the news to, and being able to signpost. Is that the right word? Signpost them to the right places for help and support. I think it's taking them. I don't know. It's a bit hard. It feels like a juxtaposition, but because you're having to rush around to other people, but it's just taking a moment to allow that moment rather than just giving it to them and you're off to the next thing.
Yeah,
that would be my advice anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tunji. And that just, I've seen your hand, Tara. That just reminds me of what you, Tara, and Carol shared with when you were given, you were told to take the tablet, but it wasn't explained to you how. And I think what Tunji said just reminded me of that, just in terms of explaining with thought and care what is happening, and not just assuming, or for whatever reason not explaining kind of what is happening in a way that's sensitive. So I will hand over to you now, Tara.
This might sound really simple and obvious, but I think I still need to say it, and that's just be nice. Like, at first I was thinking, be my friend. And then I was like, no, I don't, that's not what I would have said to somebody. I don't know if I necessarily want you to be my friend, but I want you to be nice to me and to appreciate that I've just gone through a very terrible experience. I wasn't expecting it. I don't know if anybody expects it or has an inkling, but it was a complete surprise to me. So yeah, be nice. I remember after I was induced and I was at the hospital, I wasn't given breakfast. The father had to go and practically tell off one of the nurses or the midwives on the ward and say, it's such and such a time now. She hasn't had breakfast. Somebody could have said, hi, Tara, are you okay? you know, just be nice. And Tunji mentioned it as well, be caring. And you might think I think there might be a line between being professional and being nice or caring, but I think it should encompass it all, really. And yeah, just be nice, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone has put in the chat, as you were talking, compassion. Yeah, which I think sums it up really nicely as well. It's just, as you said, it's something that sounds so simple, but it's something that has to be said, you know, just be nice. So thank you. And again, someone has also shared empathy as well. There is another comment that I think is following on from what has been said, Tara, what you just shared. And this is directed at the original question. I think what was said before is super important. Your patients may be first-time parents, and you may end up seeing thousands of patients over your career, but they are the most important people, and their experience must be treated as such. Never get complacent. So thank you to the panel and to the participants that have added answers to that as well. I'm just going to carry on going through, and again, if anyone wants to raise their hand to ask a question. So someone has made the comment, ask families about the baby. Did they know if it was a girl? Did they name their baby? Did they have a nickname for their baby? In my work on the bereavement support team, this is something that comes up very often. Parents feel like they aren't asked those kind of typically normal questions of, you know, did their baby have a name? And they often, and every parent is different, but they often find it nice to be able to talk about, you know, those details and share those things about their baby. And as the person who is supporting, it might feel like, again, uncomfortable to ask, but it is something that so many parents say they really appreciate being asked those questions. So thank you for that comment as well. Just trying to go through to make sure. So we've got another comment that says, when you meet a family at booking who has said that they have suffered a loss, ask them how it went. Do they need trauma support for their loss? So again, I think that was maybe an answer to the question on how midwives can better support their patients. Okay, so we do have a couple of more questions. So there's a question here that said, I just wanted to know, was there anything a healthcare professional did? Sorry, I just wanted to know, was there anything a healthcare professional did that really helped? Or was there anything that they said that really helped? And I think this question is from a healthcare professional, maybe wanting to know what was anything done for you that really helped during your care?
Again, I think it's just, again, reiterating what Tara said. I think the day we actually went in for the, what's it called? I don't know the medical terms, so forgive me if this is a trigger for anyone. The removal, there was a nurse there that was just so lovely, and that just, in as much as we were going to go through such a painful thing, it kind of made us feel cared for. I think that's, I don't remember her name, but I remember her face. I remember her. Does that make sense? And if I ever saw her, I think we did see her again, because both our children were born at the same hospital. We saw her again and we did say thank you. I think we sent in cards as well to those who took care of us then. I think it's that thing of, if you look at the heart of everything, everyone wants to feel cared for, everyone wants to feel loved. And I feel like it feels as if Again, I don't know, and it's hard being working for the NHS, but it feels as if the care workers are doing it because it's a job. But whereas you're dealing with people, and I think there needs to be compassion and empathy, just as people have said, and that care thing. And I think that's one thing that stood out, basically.
Yeah.
So, when I was on the ward, the midwives, they were absolutely beautiful, to be honest. Very kind, very supportive, and basically gave me some hope, even though it was hopeless. And that made all the difference in regards to me being in hospital. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Carol. Again, it feels like it goes back to the care, kindness and compassion. We have one comment on here which I think is another lovely answer. It says, when my son was stillborn, the midwife still talked to him as if he was like any other baby on the labour ward. The gratitude I felt towards that midwife at the time for doing that still sticks with me 10 years on. Thank you for that, for sharing that comment as well. Yvonne? Sorry.
I was just searching there's a quote from a specialist bereavement midwife who I worked with during our launch event during Baby Loss Awareness Week. And the quote is, acknowledging all women who have experienced baby loss regardless of the gestation. And I think that's just so important as well to be able to do, so that you just know that you're still important and so is your baby.
And you're still a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tara. I think that is so important. And I know some parents feel like their losses aren't seen as valid if it's an earlier loss. So I think that's a lovely quote to share. Thank you. Yvonne, I can see your hand is up.
I was just going to share that what really helped my husband and I was the bereavement midwife team. They were really good. So, you know, they helped us bathe Nazia. So we got to bath her, and offering, like, letting parents know it's an option to like put clothes on their baby regardless of the gestation. There's also a charity that you can do like a photo shoot with your baby, and footprints and just memories that you can still create with your baby. And the midwife team, the bereavement midwife team, should I say, was really good in letting us kind of know all the resources available, so we were able to create those memories with Nasia. And similar to kind of one of the comments in the chat that spoke about just treating your baby just with kindness and with love. So when Nasia was taken to the mortuary and we would go to see her, you know, they would tell us everything they've done, so how they've cleaned her, if they've put a little new cardigan on her. They would, almost like if you was taking your child to, I don't know, a care center, and they have to give you an update on what they did with your child. It was the same kind of process, which meant a lot to me, and that will always stay with me. And taking on board things that we said about our baby. So, you know, she had to be positioned in a certain way because she would bleed, etc. And they really took that on board and cleaned her. So I think just like treating our baby with care and love was so important, and allowing us to develop those, have those memories with her is everything. And I'm so grateful to that midwife team for doing that for us.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Yvonne. And I think your experience has been echoed in the chat as well, with someone else sharing that those updates that they got about the care of their baby was really, really important as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And I feel like there's really a theme there of just being compassionate and empathic, and just showing that you really, really care. Marjorie?
Hi, gosh, I've got goosebumps listening to everyone today. And thank you to the panel. And you know, there's that saying, there's more in common than that divides us. Being from the South Asian community and hearing what you have had to say really resonates, because what you have been through, I have been through, and so many people from the South Asian community tell me they have been through. So I feel I wanted to say thank you to SANS for recognizing this, for acknowledging it, and for doing something that's so valued for all of us and trying to make such positive change. Really, really welcome these. And I hope that there will be so many more of these. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you for sharing that. We did have a question. It was someone wanted to ask how people dealt with going back to work, and did they speak to their colleagues? Well, it said, did they speak to people about it? I assume they meant colleagues at work.
At the time I was temping, so I had my loss and I was fresh out of drama school, and I was temping, so I didn't have kind of a permanent job or permanent employment. But I remember it was just so long. I just took off from work completely. I just wasn't working at all, and I had to think of finances. I didn't even know how to do that. And I remember my sister talking to me saying, actually, I think you need to apply for like universal credit or something like that kind of thing. And when I did go back to work, it was a part-time job that I started doing in a local estate agent's. And I remember at the time, a famous celebrity, and I was working with three very nice men that I was the only female in the office. And I remember a celebrity was on TV talking about their loss, quite a high profile lady, saying she experienced a loss at the time. And my male colleague turned to me and said, oh my gosh, Tara, did you hear such and such had a loss? This time I had just had a recent loss myself. And he was like, yeah, but could you imagine going through that, how someone would feel? And literally I had gone through that, but I was too afraid to say to him, actually, I've gone through that as well. So I didn't tell anybody in that place of work what had happened to me. And I felt quite isolated as well because of that. So yeah, it took me a very long time to talk to people. I think it was the next job that I did after that, where I spoke to people, and it was only have been one lady that I told that I had the loss. And then actually going back to work, yeah, I just didn't tell anybody. I just kind of, and maybe it goes back to that Black thing of, you know, getting on with it kind of thing and being told that's what you need to do, or having that internal thought of you just get on with it, you just get your money again kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can share. When I lost Nia, my first daughter, and obviously I was pregnant. Everybody saw me pregnant at work, and I was off for probably a month, and then I went back in, and it was awful, to be honest, because everybody was saying, oh, you've had the baby, what did you have? And that was extremely difficult. But I basically at the time as well, my manager, she got me a lot of support, but it was difficult, and I just kind of think that going back, it's about preparation, preparing, and especially if you are, you know, people know that you're pregnant and then you have lost a child. It's just about being prepared. And at the end of it, I then therefore, my role, I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't work. I did not have the capacity. So then I left. and then was able to find a role that I could manage, because I was a manager at that time. So it changed my life, to be honest. Yeah. It was worse in the beginning, but it gets better.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Carol, and Tara as well. Again, I would just say, from speaking to many mothers on the helpline, you hear this is something that is so difficult and is something that is very individual. Some people choose to go back to work sooner. Some people choose to take a longer time to go back. Some people choose not to say anything. Some people may have to and say as little as possible if colleagues knew that there was a baby, and if they didn't, then they just won't say anything. There are many mums in Carol's situation who do go into different work because for whatever reason they can't stay in their job anymore. So I would say that this is, going back to work is something that is extremely difficult, and there's no kind of right or wrong way to do that process, aside from just doing what feels right for you, and that is extremely individual, but that's, I believe, the best way to work through something that is already so difficult. So yeah, thank you once again to Carol and to Tara for sharing. Tunji, I don't know if
Yes,
you're going
I was going to say, I was going to try and go from a male perspective, but I'm also self-employed, so I didn't have a constant or regular workplace. But I do feel, again, as part of you're not thinking about it as a man anyway, or for me anyway. I kind of, like, we were told, I think on the Friday, and I did a job on the Saturday. And they went to do the induction or stuff on the Monday. But throughout work, I was kind of thinking, I hope we get back on Monday and they say, oh, we made a mistake. And we do hear the baby's heartbeat and stuff. That was my hope. But then I guess in a way, I felt the need to say, I wasn't going to say anything before. I felt the need to say, again, it goes back to my point, as a man, it feels as if, why are you taking time off? Kind of feel, if you had a regular job. I mean, we did not a lot of people knew about us because it was the early stages, and so therefore, and it was just, I think it was the first scan that we went to, or second, I think, where we, after that point is when you start to maybe tell people that you are pregnant. So not a lot of people, hardly anyone, even none of my friends knew. Yeah, no, none of my friends knew, and don't know if they still know now. But it's just that whole thing where it's like, well, you have got the right to talk about to have time off. So yeah, I don't know if that, I don't know how helpful that is, but it's just the fact is, again, from a male perspective, it feels as if that's also, it's a coping mechanism to go back to work, but also if you do need time off, how dare you, kind of thing. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing. And I think it is really important to hear a male's perspective, because it's not one that is commonly heard, especially in forums like this. And I think often then assumptions can be made about what a man may think or how a man may be feeling. So once again, I just thank you so much for being open and sharing, your perspective and what you were thinking and going through as well. We do have a comment to follow on from that. It says, luckily for me, my workplace has been very supportive so far. Because I was off work for a while, I've been coming back gradually part-time, and my immediate colleagues have been so supportive and have covered me if I've had an emotional day. Thank you for sharing that. And it is really good to hear that you are having that support that you need. We do have another a comment that I will share from someone who shared that they had an ectopic pregnancy in 2019, and they had to have surgery to remove their fallopian tube, and they had a call from the midwife, and they initially panicked thinking that they forgot to cancel their appointment, but when they actually realized the midwife was calling to pass on their condolences, they thought it was such a lovely gesture. And I think that goes back to the question of how can midwives better show support, and again it just goes back to doing something that maybe they didn't need to do, but it was just really nice to show, actually, I'm thinking about you, I care, and are you okay? And I feel like that has been a theme throughout this session today. I'm going to finish with, we've got one more comment here, and I think this is a nice one to finish, and I think this is the last one anyway. But it says, thank you all for sharing all you have shared. Really grateful. Making sure families, including dads and siblings, feel recognized and included is so important. No one should have to feel any worse during such a sad time. I just want to thank again everyone for joining, everyone for staying. I know that 2 hours can feel like a long time, but I hope that this has felt valuable. I hope this has felt like a safe space. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to our panel members once again, who, again, you know, I appreciate this is not something easy to talk about, but you've been so open and honest with your responses, and I'm truly, truly grateful for you taking this time out to be here with us this evening. I want to end our time together by reminding you all first and foremost that our helpline is open this evening till 9 o'clock. We will post details again. It's further up in the chat. So if anyone does want to reach out and talk about anything that's been brought up today, or just in general, if you would ever like to talk about how you're feeling or your baby, then please do call the helpline and you can speak to one of the bereavement support team. We are going to be sharing a feedback form, and we really do value your feedback. We hope to have more of these webinars in the future, but we don't want them to be just based on what we think. We want them to be based on what we know is needed, and so that feedback from you all is vitally important. Also on that feedback form should be my email address, and so if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, please do. I would love to connect with as many of you as possible, to be able to give you the support that you need and the support that you deserve. This is our first webinar for the Black community, but I really hope, and I'm not planning for it to be the last, we will have more. And there are many other things that we are planning to do. We are planning to have online support groups specifically for the Black community. We will be having more focus groups so that we can ensure that we are always doing things that are needed based on the feedback that you give us. We are going to be working more to recruit more Black befrienders. I think that's something that's vitally important and something that we touched on. So that is something that we are working on. And we are also working on putting together something for faith groups as well.
You know me back. Definitely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're working on doing something for to reach out to faith groups as well. That's something we've identified is a huge part of, not all, but many people's lives in Black communities, various different Black communities. But as I think was spoken about today, some things aren't helpful, but there are many aspects of faith that are incredibly helpful and important. So that's another thing that we are working on as well. I wish I could give you more firm dates on when these things are going to be happening, but I don't want to share anything concrete until it's actually set up. But please do keep a lookout on our social media, because we will be sharing these things as and when they are ready to start. So I just thank you once again for joining us. And yeah, we have now shared the details of the helpline. There is the number, but there is also an email address. Some people do prefer to email and write how they're feeling rather than talk. And we do have the survey now there as well. So once again, thank you all for joining. We have come to the end, and I hope that this can be the start of us here at SANS just talking more about baby loss and showing more support to Black communities. So thank you, and once you are ready to leave, you are welcome to leave.